Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel and another reading vlog. This reading vlog, I am reading 3 newer release horror books that I feel could be 5 stars. So these are just a couple of books that I feel they're my 5-star predictions, and I think they could all have the potential to be brand new favorites of mine and make it into my top books of 2025. So let's go ahead and introduce them really quickly and kind of talk about why I think that they could be that elusive 5-star read for me. I think probably the most wild card out of these 3 would be Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. And why I say this is a wild card is because while I am really excited to read this one, I've never read anything from this author. This is a 5-star prediction because I have heard this is a genuinely terrifying and unsettling paranormal horror, which I love, and I have seen so many people reading and loving this one, from people who I have a lot of things in common with to people who maybe don't pick up that much horror. So I feel like this is such a crowd pleaser. It could be something that I would really love. Next up for my predictions, we have the Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and this is on my 5-star predictions because Silvia Moreno-Garcia is an author that I absolutely love. She has written 2 books in particular that are some of my favorites, Mexican Gothic and Certain Dark Things. I love those. Now this could be a wild card because there are some books like the Gods of Jade and Shadow, I think it is. Yeah, Gods of Jade and Shadow was a book that just ended up being okay for me, and I have DNF'd Velvet Was the Night and The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, but I've also really loved like the 2 that I've mentioned before and Silver Nitrate. So I just feel like Silvia Moreno-Garcia is an author where each book she writes feels so unique and really is a love letter to a very specific subgenre of horror or fantasy. So I think that's why some of the books really work for me. Some of them really don't. I think this one would really work for me because it's a witchy horror, and I think the way Silvia Moreno-Garcia writes would lend itself really beautifully to a horror witchy story. And this also follows 3 generations of women, and I just think that an intergenerational horror witchy story is gonna knock it out of the park for me. And then the last book of these predictions, which I hope I'm not jinxing myself right now, but is probably the safest bet and the one that I feel like I could most assume that I'm going to enjoy, and that would be The Starving Saints by Starling. This is an author that I have loved everything that she has written. She has not missed once for me. Again, I feel like I should be knocking on wood, but just this book is a medieval horror. It's a queer sapphic medieval horror about a plague and a mysterious hunger, mysterious strangers, and I've been really into medieval horror, so I think that plus an author that I really love, plus a fascinating fever dream-like type concept, I think this could be 5 stars as well. So those are the 3 books I'm reading for this vlog. I'm hoping they're all going to be 5 stars, but no matter what, I'm just hoping that this vlog is a guaranteed winner for me and I'm able to read some really fascinating horror fiction. So yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna dive into the first book, fingers crossed for a 5-star. So I am now about 20% of the way through The Starving Saints, and let's just take a moment to admire this naked hardback of the Aardvark edition of The Starving Saints. I just think it looks so cool. But this medieval horror is going really well so far. We are following Amar Castle and they are under siege. They've been under siege for months and things are looking very dire within the castle walls. We have 3 main point of views and they are all women. One of them is a knight and she serves at the right-hand side of the king. She's very concerned with the safety of the castle, safety of the king, and she knows more than most the extreme direness of the situation. We also follow Focine, who is a mage or a sorcerer. She has managed to figure out a way through magic to purify the water, and that's been keeping the castle going for longer than they could have otherwise survived for. This was a miracle. This is something that she didn't expect that she would be able to do, but because she's already performed this miracle, the king wants her to perform another one and figure out a way to create more food out of their dwindling food supply. The king gives her a guard and refuses to let her leave the tower. He wants her to keep working on a miracle. And then we also follow Trelia, who used to be a noblewoman. She is now not. We're not really sure exactly how she wound up in this castle. She has a lot of vendettas and a mysterious past that 20% of the way in we're not really sure too much about just yet, but she is desperately trying to find a way out of the castle because she also recognizes this is a sinking ship. This castle is under siege. There's no sign of the attacking army stopping, and things are looking very, very dire for everyone inside the castle walls. When tensions really rise to their breaking point and our main characters and the rest of the people in the castle start worrying that they're past the point of no return, a miracle happens. 4 people magically show up within their walls. The drawbridge wasn't raised. No one was allowed to come in, obviously, because they're under siege. No one knows how they just showed up in the courtyard, but these 4 characters are all representative of the saints that these people worship. So they start to think, this is a miracle. These saints have appeared to us at our greatest time of need, and they come bearing gifts and food, and it all seems just a little too convenient and a little too good to be true to some of our main characters. So 20% of the way in for this one. So far, so good. I put this on my 5-star predictions because Caitlin Starling is an author that I have given lots of 5 stars to before, and I really love her writing style, her prose. There's something about her horror that really gets under my skin, and I just thought that this medieval horror would work really well for me. It is working really well for me so far, and I am really enjoying the blend. We always, with a Caitlin Starling book, get thrown into a world that very much feels like our own, but there are some differences. Like, this feels very medieval Europe, but as they're talking about like the different kingdoms and the different conquering armies and things like that, you realize that it's not our England, it's not our medieval history, but another world. But other than that, like, things feel very, very similar, and I really appreciate that about her horror because I think all of them have been in a world that mirrors our own but is not exactly our own, and I like that world building alongside the horror. There has been an extremely claustrophobic scene in here. One of our main characters is like tunneling through a wall. That's all I'm gonna say about that, but the claustrophobia of that scene, like, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a genuinely scary scene, and I'm really looking forward to the fever dream that this book is supposed to be. So I'm gonna keep reading. So far, so good. I'm liking my first initial impressions, and because of the 20% mark, this is right where these saints, these saviors, have been introduced. I'm excited to see how this all kind of unravels from here. So I am now about 70% of the way through the Starving Saints, and I am really enjoying this one. I really enjoy Caitlin Starling's prose and just the way that she sets up a story. I'm really enjoying like all of the parts of this book coming together for me. I love the medieval horror vibes in this one, and I think this book is striking a great balance between a heavy atmosphere, really excellent description and ambiance vibe, but it's not a book that's all about the vibe and there's no substance. There is a lot of plot in here, a lot of intrigue. I am enjoying this one a lot so far. I'm having a great time. I know this is going to be very highly rated for me. I don't know at the end of this if it's going to be 5 stars or not yet. I think the biggest thing holding me back from just knowing that this is a 5-star at the moment is that we do have 3 main points of view. We have Servoin, we have Trela, and we have Focine, and all 3 of these characters are very distinct, which I love. However, we follow all 3 of them, and my enjoyment for who we're following is very uneven. For me to enjoy a story so much, to give it a 5 stars, I have to like all of the perspectives equally, and that doesn't even mean that I need to like all of the characters equally, but just that I don't want any points of view where we switch to that one and I feel a little let down that we're following that character instead of the others. I'm feeling that a little bit, that the 3 points of view, they all have some interesting aspects, but there's one in particular that I don't want to get into because of spoilers that I just feel like is not as engaging as the other 2. So I am really liking this one. Again, I love the medieval vibe. This definitely has a little bit of the cultish, a little bit of mysticism and religious horror. And what I like about this one is that it's fever dream-esque, not quite fever dream. I feel it's very easy to kind of understand what is going on in this one, but it has a touch of the surreal. So I like that we're still able to follow what is going on. There's a magic system that's slowly being described in a very dreamlike and sort of fractal way, but I wouldn't call this like a full-fledged fever dream because I feel like I have a really great grasp of what is going on in the narrative. But I really enjoy following all of these characters. The descent into madness, this is really dealing with what is a bad miracle, and I do really like how the characters, there are various degrees of likable, but that's because in this situation they are put in a pressure cooker, and it's the epitome of desperate people doing desperate things for this whole entire book. So I am really enjoying it so far. Definitely not a miss from Caitlin Starling. I was a little bit worried because I've been seeing some pretty low reviews of this one. I'm really enjoying it. I've got about 30% left, so we'll see if it ends up. I'm feeling like a 4.5 right now, but if the ending really wows me, of course it could turn into a 5. So I did finish The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. I really enjoyed this one. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star just because, like I mentioned in my last update, I felt like the POVs were kind of uneven, and for a 5-star, I want every single POV to have the same level of enjoyment or just interest for me. I don't want there to be a single POV where when I reach it, I'm kind of bummed it's not somebody else. But overall, I really loved this one, and I think this is probably going to be a very solid 4-star. Now, I do want to say that the purpose of this vlog, I'm not expecting for all 3 of these books to be 5 stars. It would be incredible if they were, but I'm really not expecting that because that's not really how I rate books. I feel like, I don't know if this would be like more harsh than other people or just like different than I've seen a lot of people on the bookish internet rate, but 5 stars for me, very few and far between. If I give a book a 5-star, it means that it's not only one of my favorites of the year, but it's a favorite book for me. And that would be like a favorite book of all time, not just of that year. So to get a 5-star, I need to have like a heavy emotional investment. So whether that is like an emotional reaction, like crying at a book or something like that, or putting the book down and just having to stare at a wall and just feel like so completely incomplete that I finished it. Or if not crying outright, like I need a significant emotional response. I need to feel like I want more time with the characters. I need to feel like the characters are real and that it's going to be a book that I revisit again and again and again. All that to say, my 5-star books, I read about 100 plus 150 books in a year, and I would say about 10 to 15 wind up being 5-star books. So a 4-star is a really excellent book. It's not average, it's above average. It was a really great reading experience that I loved, but it just didn't scratch that 5-star itch. And then my 3-star rating, which I feel like this is where I kind of differ from some other people, some other creators that I follow. I love a 3-star. A 3-star is a good solid book that I enjoyed reading and that I would recommend to other people very readily. I'm not mad whenever I read a 3-star. Those are reserved for books I did not like or 1 or 2 stars. A 3-star is a good book that I had a good time with, that I would feel very comfortable recommending to a lot of other people. And that is why, other than this vlog, I don't normally give my star ratings in videos, because I have noticed both in my real life recommending books to people and then on the internet, if I were to talk about a book and give the same exact information about this book, but I would say it's 3 stars in one scenario, people are more likely to not want to pick that book up or feel like it was a disappointing read for me if I include that 3-star read, which is such a bummer because a 3-star read for me could be a 5-star read for you and vice versa. And I feel like sometimes the star rating kind of gets in the way of finding books that we actually want to read. So just for me, other than this vlog, because I feel like if I say it's not a 5-star, I kind of want to qualify what exactly star rating that the books are. So other than this vlog, I do not give star ratings. I'm very picky with my 5 stars. These were 3 books that I anticipated could be favorites of the year for me. So this is a very high 4-star. I'm very pleased with that rating. I'm not disappointed that it's not a 5-star. So I did want to give that disclaimer like right up front at the top of this video. If none of these books wind up being a 5-star, I'm not going to consider this vlog necessarily a letdown. Now, if the other 2 books that I read wind up being 2 stars or something, that's gonna be a bummer. But if they all end up being 4 stars, like solid 4-star reads, that'll be great as well. So just a little note on how I rate things and how I'm expecting this vlog to go. But this was a very high 4-star. I think if it would have just gone in a little bit more at the beginning of this book with the setup of the religious system and the religious hysteria that was kind of bubbling underneath the surface at the beginning of this, got a little bit more in depth into that, and then also had just a little bit even of a buy-in for me for the characters. I think this could have been a 5-star. I really enjoyed my time reading it, and the creeping hysteria, what makes a bad miracle, and really desperate people doing really desperate things. I think you would really like this one. I love Caitlin Starling's writing style, and this also does have our main 3 main characters have this sort of, I don't want to call it a love triangle because this is not a romance, it's not a romance forward book, but they have something going on. They have a very intense pull to each other, and it is a true love triangle where all 3 of them are equally enamored with the other. So we have that tension, as well as these 3 women are doing very increasingly desperate and not the best things to try and survive this situation. These saints or not that appear at the castle, trying to survive underneath these very hard circumstances of a siege and famine and all of this stuff going on. If you like unlikable people, not even unlikable people, they could be a lot more likable in a very calm setting, but because the setting is so horrific, they do some things to try and survive. So if any of that sounds like it would be up your alley, then I would highly recommend you checking out The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. We are now moving on to the second book in this vlog, which is Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. This might be the most wild card book in this vlog because the other 2 books I've read and given 5 stars to the authors before. I've never read anything from this author, but I've just been hearing so much buzz about this book. It's a paranormal horror. I love a good ghostly paranormal horror, so I'm very intrigued, and we'll see if book number 2 is going to be a 5-star or not. So I am now 50% of the way through Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. This is the Illumicrate edition. I think that the Illumicrate Evernight subscription does an excellent job at designing not only beautiful books, but beautiful books that really fit in with the scenes and the imagery of the book. Like, there are very clear scenes that this is referencing, the end papers are referencing as well. So I really love that care that goes into these editions. But a quick note before I hop into my thoughts about this one, you might see this book as 2 separate titles depending on where you're picking it up. So the UK version of this book is just called Bat Eater. The US version is called Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. Same book, just 2 different titles. I'm just going to be calling this one Bat Eater because that's what it says on the spine and title pages of this edition. But I am really enjoying this so far. I definitely see the hype because this book is just so excellently written so far. It's really balancing a lot of emotional weight and depth while also including some very, very scary paranormal scenes. So we are following main character Cora Zhang, and at the very beginning of this book, it opens with her and her half-sister Delilah in the New York subway. It is March of 2020. COVID is at its very start, very peak. Everyone is very, very scared about this pandemic and trying to figure out how to go about day-to-day life and, you know, all of that. If you lived through March of 2020, which I'm assuming you did and can remember since you're watching this video, you know what those very scary, tumultuous first months of the pandemic were like. And this takes place in New York City. Cora and her sister Delilah are both Chinese. Cora is half white, half Chinese, and Delilah is Chinese. They're waiting for their train, and this all happens in chapter 1. It sets up the book. It's not a spoiler. They're waiting for their train. A white man comes up, shouts Bat Eater at them, and pushes Delilah in front of a train, killing her. This is obviously a very horrific event for Cora to experience, and it really showcases the extreme Asian hate that was going on in the United States and also around the world during the time of COVID. Chapter 2, we fast forward a couple of months to August of 2020. Cora is still trying to grieve for her sister while grieving for the world that once was and trying to navigate a New York that is very fraught. Not only is Cora trying to pick up the pieces and mourn the tragic and horrible death of her sister, the murder of her sister that has never been solved, but she's also trying to navigate a New York that is becoming more and more unsafe by the day. She has contamination OCD and is very genuinely terrified of catching COVID, but she's also worried about just going about her life in New York City because of the amount of hatred and hate crimes, everything on the rise of people blaming Chinese Americans for COVID. Cora is working as a crime scene cleaner, and she starts to see during the month of August that all of the clients or people that her and her coworkers are cleaning up after start to follow a pattern. They start to be young Asian women, and there are calling cards hidden within these crime scenes that make them start to worry that there is a serial killer in Chinatown and going throughout New York murdering young Asian women. August is also the Hungry Ghost Festival, and Cora starts to worry throughout all of this turmoil that she is being haunted by a specter. So we've got a lot going on in here. We've got Cora mourning her sister. We have Cora and her crime scene cleaner co-workers. They're all Asian, and they start to wonder if there is a serial killer on the loose that the police don't really care to investigate. No one seems to be putting the pieces together other than them. And then there's also this haunting going on as well. So a lot of moving parts, and heads up, trigger warnings, as I'm sure you could maybe guess, maybe glean from the plot synopsis. This is going to be very, very hard. There is a lot, a lot of racism in here, leveled towards obviously Delilah, who dies because of a hate crime, and Cora and her friends, and just there's a lot of slurs in here leveled at Cora and her friends. So, you know, if you are Asian, this could be a very, very triggering and hard read for you, especially if you went through these things yourself during the pandemic. So heads up for that, but I am really enjoying this one so far. I think it's paced really well, and while there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of plots that are all kind of vying for attention at the same time, I think Kylie Lee Baker is balancing them all really, really well. I'm really invested, and I can't wait to read the second 50% of this novel and find out how all of this comes together. So I finished Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker, and overall I really loved this one. I feel like I'm going to be really annoying when I say I don't think it's a perfect 5-star. I am going to sit and simmer on it a little bit. I think at the end of this vlog I'll revisit all 3 of these books and kind of determine my final ratings, but I don't know if it's exactly that perfect 5-star. My gut instinct wants to give it a 4.5, but there were just some things that I didn't like. The ending in particular I thought was just a little bit rushed, and some of the characters just thematically, I didn't think their character arcs and how certain characters in here I just felt like were really shoved to the wayside, and thematically it didn't make sense with the ending of this story. So that's like my biggest complaint. However, that's like a really small little nitpicky thing. I wished this book would have had about 100 more pages just to wrap everything up a little bit more. Doesn't even have to be neatly. This one is a very depressing book, and that's okay. It's horror. This one really feels like a gut punch again and again, but when things really start rolling towards that climax, towards the very end, something big and explosive happens, and then there's just a chapter at the end that I feel like everything wraps up too nicely, and I feel like there are a lot of loose ends that are not fully explored in the way that they should be, and I feel like that does a disservice to a lot of the side characters in specific, but also Cora herself. However, the rest of this book I absolutely loved. I loved how the beginning was a little bit slower. We slowly are drawn into all of these different conflicts along with Cora, and then like the 50% mark, things really start ramping up. The horror starts ramping up. There were 2 specific scenes that I felt my jaw physically drop because I was so shocked. This is a book where you never feel like any character is safe. There never feels like there's any sort of plot armor, and I love that. The paranormal elements were really excellent in here. This was very creepy. The ghosts were genuinely very terrifying, and I thought that the balance of Cora and exploring the loss and the grief of her sister, this really explores being haunted by a loved one in more ways than one, because after you lose someone you still feel them in your life, and just exploring all of the different and complex emotions grieving like brings up, or what exactly grief feels like. So balancing that, and then this serial killer plot, and then also the Hungry Ghost Festival and these paranormal hauntings that are starting to happen to Cora. I thought all of that was balanced really well. There was a found family element in here. There were some friendships that I thought were just built up so strongly between Cora and her coworkers who turn into friends, and I really loved this one. There's a lot to love in here. It's very emotionally weighty and also packs a number of very good scares. Just like I mentioned, just the ending just a little bit flat for me. I just felt like it wrapped up far too quickly, and I just needed just some more page count to explore some things that happened in the end that I felt like we really glossed over in order to conclude this story. So I want to give it a 5, but just the ending has me. I need to think about this one some more, but if it's not a 5, it's a 4.5. This one definitely is getting so much hype, and it's so well deserved. This is a really, really great paranormal horror. So that is book number 2. We are now going to be moving on to the third and final book in this vlog, which is The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is an intergenerational horror story about witches and scholars, and I'm really, really intrigued by this one. Obviously, I'm guessing it's going to be a 5-star for me, so I can't wait to dive in and see how it goes. So I am currently 30% of the way through The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm absolutely loving this one so far. So much so that I read the first chapter, and when I was finished with it, immediately went back to the beginning of the chapter and read it again because I was just absolutely so entranced by the story that this book is setting up. So this is a multi-generational, multi-POV story, and we are following 3 different women throughout very different times in history. Even though we do get 3 perspectives, I would say the main perspective is of Minerva, and she is a grad student at a university, and her timeline takes place in 1998, and she is creating her thesis around a horror writer named Beatrix Tremblay, who went to the same university that she goes to. Beatrix Tremblay was a pioneer in the horror field, and she was contemporaries with people like Lovecraft. She published a number of horror short stories and then a horror fiction book called The Vanishing. Minerva is so enamored with this writer, and as she is doing more research for her thesis, she stumbles upon the fact that the book The Vanishing, while that was fiction, it was actually heavily inspired by a disappearance that happened within Beatrix's own life while she was at the university. So Minerva is going through all of these first-person accounts and letters and correspondence and drafts and notes that Beatrix created, not only around her work that is being published, but also this disappearance of her friend. Minerva becomes really entrenched within that mystery, and she's also entrenched in the mystery not only because this seems like a really significant literary achievement. She's uncovered new things about this author that no one else has before. That's obviously great for her thesis, but the story that starts unfolding really reminds Minerva of her great-grandmother's stories. Her great-grandmother Alba, she had a lot of stories about a disappearance and also the involvement of witchcraft. And as Minerva is researching, she finds more and more similarities between her great-grandmother's stories and what happened to Beatrix's friend, and also starts to wonder if there is some sort of dark occurrings happening on her college campus, the same sort of happenings that were happening when Beatrix and her friend went to the college several decades before. So we're following Minerva as she is uncovering all of that research. We're also following her great-grandmother Alba, and we're following her in 1908. And we're following Alba as a very young woman as she is going through a series of events that start out very mundane, very commonplace, and turn into a catastrophe situation involving a disappearance. So we have that POV. We also have the POV of Beatrix herself, and she is writing almost like her chapters read like a memoir or a diary entry, as she is talking about the fateful events that happened at the college in 1934, and she is chronicling the series of events that happened to her and her friend group before her friend went missing. So we're following all three of these women, and what I love about this one so far is that each point of view feels so unique. The character voices are so strong and they're very clearly very different from each other. I know we talked earlier in this vlog about multiple POVs and how for a book to be a 5-star for me, I have to enjoy reading all of the POVs the same exact amount, and that is definitely the case for this one so far. The way that it is set up, each of these women have a very distinct voice. I think that's such an impressive thing that Silvia Moreno-Garcia has managed to do, is craft these three very distinctive characters. So I really like that, and the ways in which they're slotted together, their stories are slotted together, it's really great. It's keeping a sense of tension, a sense of mystery, and I am really loving this so far. I mean, I definitely can see how this is categorized as like a gothic horror, but it also feels very much so like a campus novel. I feel like it could be like sisters with a lot of the dark academia, campus satires, campus mysteries sort of novels as well, and I'm absolutely eating that ambiance and that atmosphere up. I just have a really great feeling about this one, and I know if I get any further into this one, I won't want to stop until I reach the conclusion. So I wanted to come on, give an update, give a little bit of a synopsis and my initial thoughts before I speed through this one, because I'm absolutely loving it so far, and I have a little bit of a 5-star feeling about this one. So I'm gonna go get back to reading and I'll check back in later with an update. I am so tired. I stayed up way too late last night watching the X-Files and finishing The Bewitching, and I'm so excited to report that this is indeed a 5-star book. I absolutely loved this one from beginning to end. I really just loved every single part about it. The POVs, they were all so distinct and unique, and I really loved the different character voices that emerged from each different time period. This is a fantastic example of something that blends a little bit of fantasy along with some great witchy horror. I've been on the hunt this year for a witchy horror that's worked for me, and I'm very happy to report that this one did. I really loved the campus academia setting. Now this one, it takes place, one of the perspectives takes place very heavily in the summer, and then one takes place very heavily in the winter, so I would hesitate to recommend it as a fall book for that reason. But because of the heavy witchy atmosphere and also that campus setting, I do think this could be a great book to pick up for October, just if you want to get, I just feel like witches and campus settings are so integral to autumnal horror. So this could be a really great October read because of that. This is the third 5-star that I've given Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I'm just really pleased that I got a 5-star out of this vlog. This was such a great reading experience. I already feel like this one is a book that I could reread again and get some new things out of it. I loved the prose and the style of this one. I think if you do like more of an understated gothic horror and you are looking for a good, genuinely creepy witchy horror, then I think this would be a great book for you to pick up. So I'm very happy with the results of this reading vlog. So just to recap, The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling was a 4-star, and then Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker, I am going to settle upon a 4.5 because the more I've sat with this one, it was really, really excellent, very impactful. Just there were some things about the end I didn't like, the pacing, and then the thematic endings and conclusions of some character arcs I thought weren't the greatest. So those are very small qualms, but enough for me to recognize that this is not like a book that I would consider perfect. That's okay. It doesn't need to be 4.5 stars. It's still really high, but I do feel better about ranking it a 4.5 because when I was reading The Bewitching, which is of course my 5-star of this vlog, it was so apparent to me, like from chapter 1, I felt something special about this book. I felt like this book was going to to be 5 stars, and it's just that 5-star feeling that's really hard to describe that put this book just a level above the other books that I read for this vlog. So definitely very happy with my reading for this vlog. It was a success. I'm really glad I got around to reading some of my most anticipated books of 2025. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!